So just FYI, nobody has to mourn abusers. Rapper XXXTentacion was shot and killed in Florida last week. And I'll be honest, I'm 29. I don't think I've ever listened to one of his songs on purpose, and I'm not sure I completely understand the depth of his cultural impact. But I've definitely heard about this man because he had a history of abuse. Last year it came out that he tortured his pregnant girlfriend. The details of that incident are actually so horrific that I will not be going into them now. It's a huge trigger warning, but I will leave links below. And he is also quite literally a violent homophobe. Since his death, I've also heard that he struggled with mental health, and the kid was only 20 years old. But there has been a really interesting and I think necessary conversation about what do we do when the life of somebody who wasn't really a good person gets cut short? Do we have to pretend to forgive them or be neutral about the death? Or is it appropriate to say, you know what? Fuck him. Frankly, I'm of the opinion that people get to choose. If you want to mourn this young man's life that was obviously cut short, another black man gunned down, that's fine. You know, and if after assessing the details of his biography and realizing that he's caused irreparable harm to members of some of the most marginalized parts of our communities, you decide that you are just not going to spend that emotional energy there, that's fine too. We can't be out here forcing people to mourn anyone. It's just nonsensical, particularly when they are perpetrators of violence. The only reason why we're even having these conversations about respecting XXXTentacion in his death is because he is a young, straight black man. Now, I know we're in the midst of this movement where straight black men feel like they are the most attacked people in our community, but that's just not true. So let's say that this was a 20-year-old white man who had tortured, and when I say tortured, I mean quite literally tortured a young black man. We wouldn't be having these conversations about redeemability. So I understand that when we assess XXXTentacion's life and his violent acts, we're supposed to keep in mind the effects of structural inequality, systemic racism. I get it, right? Young black men are targets. So are the rest of us. But if we accept that young black men are going to abuse and violate people in their communities while they're working through their trauma, that means that we reduce their victims to collateral damage. And that's not okay. Because we never get back around to addressing the trauma that victims endure. So I've seen people like Jadena, and quite frankly, too many others, try to invoke historical figures who underwent huge transformations in their lives to try to defend this young man. And like, I get it, but like, no. We recognize that Malcolm X and Malcolm Little were not the same person. Thankfully, he had the opportunity to grow and learn and evolve. But there are tons of people who make it to 40, 50, 60 and keep those same abusive attitudes. Trying to force us into making those mental calculations really feels like emotional manipulation. All we can assess is what this man left behind in his 20 years. And yeah, that sucks. Untimely deaths are unfortunate. And you know what? I do cringe when I think about what I would have left behind if I were killed at 20. But that's life. And I think what people don't understand is that people who've decided that they're not going to mourn XXXTentacion are not being malicious. It's not even really about that dude, even though that dude did some extremely messed up stuff, right? It is about trying to create a culture where we are always prioritizing victims. Now clearly XXXTentacion did not deserve to die. I don't believe in the death penalty under any circumstances. I've said it before, I think everybody can be restored. But restoration is not a given. You don't die and get immediately forgiven. So there are a couple of foundational pillars of my politics. One is I don't believe in punitive punishment. I have no desire to derive pleasure from somebody else's suffering. It's just not what I'm into. But two is, in order to create a world where people don't have to needlessly suffer, people who perpetrate violence have to be held accountable. And yeah, it gets messy. Like, this is a messy, uncomfortable, difficult situation to work through. So I know people who do horrific things need to be healed, right? It is incumbent upon us as a society to make sure that we are investing in institutions and social structures to make that possible. But after you've been healed, you also have to come back in your community and make it right to the people you did wrong. You can't skip those steps. So I recognize that his girlfriend whom he abused showed up to one of his vigils after his death. And I hope that she's well and getting all the help that she needs, but honestly, that doesn't do a whole lot to change my view on this. People who feel the way they feel about the situation have every right to that stance. Black women and Black LGBTQIA people are always going to be asked to mourn our abusers because our pain, our experiences with hurt and trauma are deemed less legitimate and less important. If the traumas of straight Black men are consistently viewed as the most damaging, as the most important, we're never going to get to a point where victims of trauma are centered, where we invest our resources into making sure that they're healed. If we really took seriously what it means to be stalked, harassed, abused, raped, or assaulted, we wouldn't even really be having this conversation. So let people do what they need to do. Well guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to help me continue making this content, become a patron on Patreon. There are reading lists, exclusive content, and merch. Don't miss out, or make a one-time donation. Join me at Black Girls Gather events around the country. We'll hang out and have fun. Again, grab a t-shirt. Thank you so much. Bye.